Oh, be careful what you say. Don't speak it into existence. What? Oh my gosh. If that's not evidence of some tweaked survival strategies, I don't know what is. Now, part of the dance floor, I think, is, wow, words are super powerful. But also we miss the other side of the dance floor, that they're ridiculous and they don't mean anything. And both are true. Both are true. The primary block is shame. Shame is the intrinsic belief that you are flawed, that who you are is wrong. Okay? Now, shame's an interesting one because it's a big part of why we're still around today as human beings. At its core, it was a survival strategy. Because a long time ago, this whole the strong survive, bullshit, that's not true. The connected, the conforming are who survived. This whole alpha, that would have been the first dude to die tens of thousands of years ago. The people who stayed connected and conformed lived longer. Tribes, strength together, all the sticks that are harder to break, right? And shame was the signal that went off in you when you wanted to go be your own person. I want to go be my own person. And then shame would go, that's a bad idea. You'll die. Come back. And interestingly, if you think about the critical nature that women play in the extension of our species, then you start to understand why statistically women experience shame at higher levels, deeper levels than men typically do. It's not across the board, but typically do. Because if they leave and don't come back, hello, there goes the end of the species. It's over. So there's a strange appreciation we're going to want to have for shame at its core mechanism to be able to start being able to work with it differently. It is not an infection or a disease we want to get rid of. It is a maladaptive strategy. One of the biggest ones, one of the most prominent maladaptive strategies. And it is not something that we can conquer. The more you try to conquer shame, the stronger it becomes. The more you try to beat it, the more you're playing into its hands. It is something we feel into. It is something we allow to be there in terms of the sensory experience. We are there wanting to release and exhaust the fuel of shame. But it's hard to do because it's got very convincing stories. And that's where shame gets us in trouble, is its stories. Its stories are garbage, but the sensations are true. And most of us that are so head dominant can't separate the two because that's the primary language of the head, are the stories. Stories are very provocative. Stories can dysregulate the body very quickly. That's why they're so powerful in marketing and sales. Because stories can dysregulate someone. And if you can dysregulate someone and then convince them you have the solution to their dysregulation, they will buy whatever you've got. They will buy into whatever you've got, whatever regime, whatever belief system, whatever that is. So we're going to want to start understanding these things because when we can allow the primary objective to be expressed. And that's to create, to be creative, to create. That's what the head mind, that's what the explorer wants to do, wants to be creative. Think about it. Think about being able to dance in creativity, authenticity, and safety in the proximity of all three. Not the perfection of all three, the proximity and presence of all three. We are here to live a life of presence, not a life of perfection. But imagine being able to touch those, being able to drop into those. That's intelligence, is the intelligence of all three dancing in proximity together. That is a ongoing, never-ending recalibration because you are a walking contradiction. You are and you are becoming. That is both massively frustrating and beautifully adventurous. But we want all three to be able to walk us through what we've been taught to be afraid of. We've been taught to be afraid of paradoxes and contradictions and counterintuitive. We've even been taught to be afraid of hypocrisy, when it's the very nature of being human. We created this nasty word, being a hypocrite, just so that we could be afraid of of expansion and adaptation, which made us easier to be controlled. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today. I promise it doesn't go as dark and conspiratorial as you might think. I think ultimately that's as silly as anything else. But okay, Paul, question.
Yeah, so this is really cool. Just trying to map this onto how I normally think about this process. And so we often talk about like the amygdala, the source of fight or flight. And so how do you take that model? And as I understand it, it's the gut is the source of that. So can you help me understand like the explanation for that?
So I want you to ask your question again a little bit clearer in terms of what you're looking for in terms of what are you asking me to explain in terms of the amygdala? But then I want to share something that came up for me that a lot of people don't realize that I think is amazing about the amygdala. But please, can you reframe the question just a little bit for me?
Yeah, so maybe the question is, I guess I think the instinctual resides in the brain under the amygdala model.
Okay.
And yet there's neurochemistry going on that gets our brain to respond.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it sounds like the energy, I don't know what the right word is actually stored in the gut. And all the neurons in the gut or something. So maybe I'm looking for a physiological explanation.
Got it.
Of how it works, or
yeah. So there is a much more scientific, whatever, different thing that we could get into in terms of we've thought the brain was the command center for a long time when actually it's receiving more information than it's giving out. It's not the command center. It's kind of like it's the request center. It receives the requests. And the brain has corresponding parts. Like when I talk about the head mind, I'm not talking about the whole brain. I'm just talking about the neocortex. Okay? But the amygdala is associated with the gut mind.
Okay, so it's just the connection.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, but there's a reason we call it a gut feeling. Okay? There's a reason why people that are in dysregulation and hijack can most closely sense it in their gut and in this twisted, turning enmeshed thing. Okay? Because when, like in utero, your heart neurologically was formed first, and then it lent the tissue neurologically to develop the brain and the gut. I think that's poetically beautiful and scientifically beautiful. But we've learned over the last few decades that it's not just the gut, it's not just intestines down here. It's actually a very complex neural network. And it's not just a big muscle pumping blood. It's actually a very complex neural network. Just what we've learned about the language of heart rate variability in the last 10 years is mind-blowing. We thought heart rate variability was some response to other factors. It turns out it might actually be one of the primary instructionary systems for what the rest of the body needs to do to meet what's being required. It's kind of cool. Again, I'm a nerd with stuff like this. But here's something rad about the amygdala that I don't think it's talked about very much. The amygdala gets talked about as the fight or flight center, but it is also the greatest radar and compass for pleasure. It is so honed in on preventing danger, and we live in such a dysregulated state that most people don't ever get to tap into its other side, and that is being such a natural instinct for pleasure. To teach your body how to seek and find the pleasure that it wants. What's interesting though is we have twice as many receptors in our body for pleasure as we do for pain. But most of us associate far more of our life with pain, even if it's necessary pain, to get to these brief moments of pleasure. If that isn't indicative of not understanding these maladaptive survival strategies and attachment strategies and just trying to cognitively put frosting on it over and over again, I don't know what is. But the instinct of survival is just as powerful as an instinct for pleasure when regulated and when allowed to have enough space, enough presence, and enough energy and capacity to actually be able to switch that over. It's pretty cool. So, any other questions? And then we're gonna wrap things up. Okay. What was let me get back to the chat. What was the language of the heart? The language of the heart is feelings. Actually, emotional, sensory feelings. not the feelings that are the cognitive reaction to what we're actually feeling, that are then backed up by the pharmacy of the brain that it can release, but our actual sensory experience, the affects of your human body. And then you've got the sensory patterns of your human body. That's the language of the gut mind. And then you've got interestingly, the patterns of your thought. That is the language of the cognitive mind, the words and the explanations and things like that. So I talked a little bit about these 4 archetypes. I'm going to review them very briefly. I'll give you an opportunity to be able to dive into these a lot deeper. But these 4 archetypes were created. I created these as a way to help coaches and guides and healers understand themselves better, so that they can start trusting themselves a lot more than they've been conditioned to trust others and other modalities and other things. So that they can, I'm fine. I think using modalities is beautiful. I just think there is a tremendous amount of unconscious loyalty to them that a lot of coaches and guides, whether psychological modalities, energy modalities, spiritual modalities, and a number of different things. Understanding your archetype is just a frame I'm using to help someone trust themselves. That's really what it is. It's not to trust this archetype. It's building it just enough that someone can start to trust themselves and kind of get away from some of the conditions that have been put on them, especially in marketing. That's where I found for a lot of coaches and guides and healers, one of the toughest things is they just want to do what they're born to do, and marketing and sales just seem like a means to an end, and they're oftentimes very disjointed. But it's often because they weren't taught to be able to trust who they are in a coaching session can be the person that gets the sale. Conceptually, they try to do it, but it's still very disjointed. And so I built these as a way to help smooth that over. But they are also applicable to any entrepreneur, any leader, okay, and many other roles in your life. And they are the muse, the mirror, the oracle, and the anchor. Each of them have slightly different essence. We all have all 4 in different ways, but oftentimes we have a dominant one. And I have a test that can help you identify this. But like the essence of the anchor makes people feel safe in a way they cannot explain. It's absolutely beautiful. It doesn't mean that the other 3 can't do that. That's just the primary leading energy and expression of the anchor. The oracle cuts through. They see truth in situations before anyone else has the courage to name it. The mirror sees people with a depth and precision that stops them in their tracks. And the muse moves through the world like a spark in a dry field. And each has different essence, different gifts, different challenges going the other direction. The muse is evocative and inspiring, shows people what's possible. Their primary gifts are profound experiences, attracting people through emotional expression, opening people up without force or strategy. Some of their primary challenges are inconsistency. They confuse peak experiences with the actual integration. They underprice and undervalue themselves more than any of the other archetypes. The mirror is precise and attuned and powerful when they're in direct, close contact. They're extraordinary one-on-one. They build deep trust quickly. Some of their primary challenges, they avoid public visibility. They struggle to create content or public presence. They wait to be found rather than stepping forward. The oracle is truth-driven, catalyzes breakthroughs in single conversations. They generate profound breakthroughs for people, create clarity, command credibility, but they're polarizing, and they lack relational softness oftentimes. They convert when people are ready, but poorly when people are still warming up. The anchor is steady, holds space, creates the conditions for transformation without forcing it. They build trust quickly. They're exceptional at long-term work. They are traditionally calm and clear and naturally grounded, but they avoid challenges and confrontation. They struggle to create urgency, and they can often enable stagnation in the name of compassion. So these are really powerful archetypes that are really fun ways of using this playground, using the playground of your business, your passion, your hobbies, whatever. These are all playgrounds we use to be able to find and feel into those blocks we were talking about without trying to seek them and change them. Because the more you want to change your survival strategies, the more defensive they become. So it's quite an interesting counterintuitive game. that's really important to learn how to play. So as we're wrapping up here today, I want to name something before I let you go. Okay, right now in this moment, speaking of 4 types, which just seems to be like my love language, I guess. There's kind of 4 types of people after a conversation like this. There's the renovator. The renovator is the person that's been growing for years. They've done the courses and read the books, hired the coaches, built the offers. They've redone their brand so many times. They've pivoted the niche and updated their bio endlessly. And every few months, they stand back and look at what they've built, and something still feels off. So they renovate again and again and again. And they've probably spent a lot of money doing this. And if this is you, I want to say this with as much love as I can. You're not behind because you haven't learned enough. You're in the same place because you keep renovating the same house and the same foundation rather than getting to these blocks and learning to build a new one. It's not a course problem. It's not a strategy problem. It is a root problem. And the roots don't change through renovation. So the second type is the philosopher. The philosopher understands everything. They're the person that I talk to, and they're very engaged and say, oh yeah, I understand that. I get that. They've heard every idea tonight, and they were tracking it. They were contextualizing it, cross-referencing it with several other frameworks that they already know. And they can articulate the concept before I even finish the sentence. And this is very comforting to the philosopher. They've been doing this for years. It allows them to feel like I'm on track without having to go anywhere else. Okay? Understanding deeply, integrating slowly, changing almost nothing. That's one of the challenges of the philosopher. Here's the thing about the intelligence of this as a protection strategy is it's the most sophisticated form of staying exactly where you are while you feel like you're moving, but you're staying in the same place. Rather than a wheel that is traveling, it's like a wheel that's fallen over and it's just spinning in circles like a merry-go-round. So you feel the motion, you feel the G forces without actual transformation. So if your head is always 3 steps ahead of your life, that's not wisdom. That's a distancing mechanism. So the work I'm talking about doesn't require more understanding, which is what fuels the philosopher. It requires the willingness to feel something you've been thinking around, you've been thinking over or under. The third type is the treasurer. The treasurer is interested, maybe even deeply interested, but they're running numbers, they're calculating, they're asking whether the juice is worth the squeeze before they've even let themselves taste it. So I have enormous compassion for this one because underneath the audit is almost never genuine financial discernment, not actual genuine financial discernment. It's fear and insecurity. And underneath it is this quiet belief that the investment won't return. And underneath that is something even quieter, the belief that they are not quite worth it. And so even though they've probably still invested, they've done just enough to prove this right without even realizing that was the strategy all along. And it's devastating. That's why I bring a lot of compassion to that person. And that is a scary one to be ready to not be ready to challenge. So here's what I know after years of this work, that the cost of staying exactly where you are is always higher than the cost of moving. It's just scarier. So you pay it in smaller and invisible installments. You don't realize it, like the rent to own place that you don't realize you ended up paying 3 times what you would have paid up front to buy that thing. So it's in the opportunities you didn't take. It's in the version of yourself you keep postponing. In another year, it'll almost look exactly like the last one with just a slightly different costume. So the squeeze is never the problem. The problem is convincing yourself that you don't need the juice. And then the fourth type is the one who already knows. Something shifted tonight, maybe early, maybe just now. You're analyzing it, but trying not to. You're feeling it, but not quite sure what it is that you're feeling. There's a pull that's been there the whole time and it gets louder in the room. You're not asking if this is for you. You're asking if you're brave enough to say yes to what you already know. And you are. In this moment, or at least you could be. You could be. Not next month when things settle. Not after you think about it for 2 weeks. Now. following the pole, being able to actually do this. As a mentor of mine shared with me in a way that has given me huge ROIs and huge dividends in my life. He said, you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. You teach someone to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. If you teach them to fish in a storm, they will change their life and everybody around them forever. I've never met someone who wasn't in some version of a storm when they took a leap and decided to work with me. But I'm not here tonight asking you to take that leap. All I'm doing is asking you to take the leap of meeting with me. Take whatever stirred, take whatever hit, whatever missed, whatever from tonight, and book a call. Just talk to me. Let's dive in. Now, if you are sure that your will to convince yourself you're not worth it and you're not investing and you're not doing anything, I'm not even talking with you about amounts, and I'm not even going to give you one because that's not a qualifier for me. The only qualifier is that you are willing to see if you would be willing to do this. But if you already know you're not, if you already know you're a tire kicker, if you already know you love to be the philosopher, you love to be the renovator, but you're out of money as the renovator, and you're still loving the high of telling yourself you're creating something different as the philosopher, then don't book the call. But if you think it might be something else, that doesn't need to be pressure, because you're not going to get that from me. Okay? That's just not how I operate. To get to these blocks, I can't persuade you to want to do that work, because otherwise that's the very strategy that we will start with that we won't be able to touch, is persuasion. And these blocks are not going to be persuaded into changing. It comes from a different place. And if you're a coach, facilitator, a guide, and you want some help learning how to integrate what I'm talking about into what you're doing, for what's coming, what is already here, for the era of frameworks not being valuable is already here. The human soul is not looking for more frameworks. They're looking for a place where their framework can melt so they can find themselves in them, where they can fall apart and not have their whole life and world fall apart, and find themselves in that. To get to these strategies, to see what can't be seen, and to shift them. And if you are in a position to help people do that, I would be honored to help you do that better. And if you're in a position where you want to do that for you in your business, whatever it is, I would be honored to have that conversation. So what I'm going to do is put a link in the chat for those of you who would like to book that call. Do it. Okay. It's just wholebodymindset.com/unpack. I've had very specific approaches in the past, and those typically have been very small, intimate groups, 5, maybe at the most 8 people, because I want it to be a very individual feeling experience, and I typically involve one-on-one sessions in those, or one-on-one. But there might be something else stirring for one of you. I can't do it for all of you, but there's probably a few of you that could fit in that intimate group or fit in the one-on-one. And there might be a couple of you that need something else, and I'm open to exploring what that could be. Something that fits where you're at, but still has a squeeze, but the juice is worthwhile because you are worthwhile. I'm not here to offer. I've got a course that I've got coming out. I was thinking about pre-launching here on tonight for $197 instead of the $397. All that kind of that just didn't feel aligned. I've got the Unmarketable Coach course coming out, which is called The Initiation. I've got the And Then What course coming out, which is kind of my very productive expression of the frustration I've got of how many people heal, but actually just isolate, and kind of the and then what of healing. Like, what was the point? The point wasn't to land in peace and calm. That's the laboratory to create something amazing on the other side of this. So teaching you the and what of that and being able to reorganize even what you thought healing was, let alone what you get to do with it afterwards. And those things will come out, and I'll let you know about those things. And those people that work with me just get access to those things automatically. Like, I've already sent the initiation course to a bunch of people who have done the groups with me and done one-on-one with me and stuff like that. But what felt aligned tonight was just a talk. Let's just talk. Not all of you are going to do that. As simple as that sounds, not all of you are going to just click on a link and be like, I am willing to stand in front of me with you. That's all I would love to do. And if there's something from that conversation that was enough, then that will be enough. But if there's a possibility that's more and you're feeling like, okay, it might be time for more. It might be time for something else. Not because I'm the answer, but I happen to be the one that's in front of you right now. So I would be honored. So I hope you'll book something. And if you jump on that link and you're like, wow, there's nothing available for a while, then email me. There's certain times that I don't put on that link that I might be able to make some room for you. So let me know if you click on that link tonight and you're like, oh, there's nothing that works for me for a couple weeks, or there's nothing that works for me at all. Then just email me and we'll get creative. Again, I can't do that for everybody, but usually it's not everybody that needs that. So any last questions or thoughts? Thanks for being here. Like, genuinely. It is never lost. I haven't done one of these since February. I just realized as I was setting this up, like, time flies. I thought I'd just done one a month or two ago. And I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I never get to this point wrapping up one of these and not just have a moment of awe that, like, holy shit, people actually want to hear what I have to say. Whoa. I still very much have the very insecure part of me I grew up with on board, and it is one of my greatest allies. I have learned that I cannot help you get into your blocks of strategies if I don't bring all of me into the space. If your insecurity doesn't get to feel my insecurity, if your humanity doesn't get to feel my humanity, it doesn't seem to work. So one of the biggest differences is I've just learned that how you feel right now doesn't go away. I can just show you how to dance with it better. So much love to all of you. Thank you so much. I'll get this recording sent out for any of you that want to kind of go back over some things. But I'd recommend, since you were already here, book the call and let's go over them one-on-one. Again, unless, I don't want to use this to scare anyone away and whatever, but like, if you're the person who if you really tune in honestly is probably just going to have the conversation, then just let me know that first before you book. And then we can at least talk through that. And it probably won't be a no, but I at least want to have that on the table before we book something. Because I do want to prioritize the people that are wanting to step into that fourth category. Something shifted tonight, especially those that had something shift they don't have words for yet. That's my specialty. So, all right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.